even know if this is our intro music. This came on the podcast machine that I got. Is this a stock noise or someone else's? I don't know. We'll find out.
Stephen R. Covey once said, "Most people do not listen with the intent to understand. They listen with the intent to reply." We have something to say worth listening to. This is Real Talk. Real Talk. The podcast. Telling the story and lessons learned of industry leaders, entrepreneurs, professional athletes, and the movers and shakers of the business world. Have you been told no? Have you been told that you can't do it? Have you been told that you'll never get to the next level? That noise. Yeah, we said it. We're telling you you can do it, and you can get to the next level. If others have done it, so can you. Real Talk. This is Real Talk, the podcast. And this is your host, Mason.
Yo, what is going on, everybody? It is Mason coming back at you with another episode of Real Talk. Today we are joined by a lifetime actor and performer who has entertained people on some of the most prestigious stages, such as the Chicago Humanities Festival, the Players Club, and the famed Oak Room at the Algonquin. He is also the host of the podcast Vanishing Postcards, which has been named one of the best podcasts of 2021 by Digital Trends. Vanishing Podcast invites listeners to ride shotgun on a digital road trip exploring the traditions, hidden lives, and offbeat attractions that can be found by exiting the interstate. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Evan Stern. Evan, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Mason. Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, man. How's your day going?
It's going well. You know, I'm talking to you today from New York City, so I apologize in advance if you hear any sirens or street noises outside. That's kind of the way of life up here. I actually live in New York, though I am proudly originally from the beautiful city of Austin, Texas. So I like to think I'm bicultural. I'm a Texas New Yorker. I get the best of both worlds. It's a good thing.
Those are two different worlds, I think, you know?
Historically, Texans and New Yorkers have gotten along pretty well, though. I mean, I think they're both kind of very proud of their respective land. It's just kind of a different scenery in both places.
Sure. I feel like the acting and performing kind of culture is probably a little bit stronger in New York.
Absolutely. Well, it's what drew me here initially. Growing up in Austin, I always knew that I wanted to be performing. I wanted to be pursuing a career in the stage. I figured that New York was the place for it, so I came up here for school, and I ended up staying.
I know I can't even think of anybody that I've ever met who said like they don't like New York or they used to live there and they're I've heard people say that about all kinds of different places. You know, they're like, oh, I lived there for 2 years and I hated it. Never heard anyone ever say that about New York ever.
Well, New York is a love-hate relationship. It absolutely is. Living here is it's an endurance test. It takes a lot of work. You got to deal with the subways. You got to pay your rent. You got to hustle. But I do believe that I'm not sure I've really met anyone. If you move to New York and you try it for a little while, I do believe that you are going to leave better than you were when you first got here. There's always in New York. There's always going to be someone better in your respective field, no matter what it is, and that level of competition just forces you to rise up. You have to work hard, and it makes you better. It does.
Recently someone was talking about New York, and I heard like the coolest thing, and it was the reason that they love New York so much, and it was that no matter where you want to go in the city, the subway, the train, I'm not sure what you guys call it, is the fastest way to get around. So whether you're a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, or you're just trying to get to your restaurant on time so that you can serve tables, like you're sitting next to each other, you're all New Yorkers, and like that's the way you do it, because that's the fastest way, and everyone has this like mutual New Yorker respect, kind of like that, and that was like the one thing that really drew him.
Yeah, I absolutely love city life, and it's so much of what keeps me here. I spent last year essentially away from New York because of the pandemic. I found myself back home in Texas, which was wonderful, and I absolutely love Texas. And often I think maybe it is time to try some different scenery, maybe. But then when you get back here, you're just reminded of how wonderful and special city living can be. I don't have a car; I can walk everywhere, and at the same time, I mean, in many ways, New York actually is a small town. Manhattan is a really small place. There just happen to be a couple million people who live here, and I mean, I'm running into people that I know on a daily basis, and every neighborhood here really becomes a village unto itself.
That's incredible. Yeah. I just feel like you embody that classic kind of like New Yorker mentality. Like when you talk to a New Yorker, they're like, "Look, let me tell you about my New York. Like, it's so unique and excellent. Everything's got its own little nook and cranny," and I love that. That's super awesome. So, you said you spent some time in Texas during 2020. You had to go back to your hometown. So what were you doing, and what new adventure did you kind of embark on?
So I'm one of those people who, over the last 10 years, just absolutely fell in love with podcasts and audio storytelling. And, I just kind of, hearing, I'd listen to these shows, and it wasn't like there was this lightning bolt of inspiration, but I just kind of started hearing this voice in my head saying, you know what, maybe you should try your hand at this and see what you could do. And, for a while, the YouTube algorithm kept recommending these travel videos, these travel vloggers, and whenever I would see them, I wouldn't always necessarily see the way that I enjoyed traveling represented in these videos, because with a lot of them, I rarely found that it actually was about the places that they were going to. It was much more, oh, look at me and how cute I am in this place. Basically, too, my interest in podcasting probably started with something as simple as The Moth. That's just a program where people get up and they tell personal stories without notes. There are other programs that I love, like This American Life, The Kitchen Sisters. And I thought to myself, if there's one thing that I know, it's that Texas people love to talk and they tell great stories. So I'm kind of immersed in the gig economy up here in New York, and I absolutely detest the winters here. I've been here for a long time. I have never made peace with them, and so I have, kind of tried to arrange my life so that when it gets cold, I can leave town. And so in January of 2020, I went back home to Texas. Just to try my hand at recording some oral histories, seeing what I could put together. It wasn't like I set out with a grand vision initially. I had a few ideas for stories that I wanted to investigate. But once I got to work, I pretty quickly found myself in a groove, and the project evolved into Vanishing Postcards. So basically the concept of Vanishing Postcards is through the series, listeners are invited to join me on a road trip exploring the hidden dives, traditions, frequently threatened histories that you'll discover when you exit the interstate. And the reason that I called the series Vanishing Postcards is because each episode, it's produced in documentary style, but each episode really provides a snapshot of a different place. And if there is a recurring theme that the places have in common, it's that you don't know how much longer a lot of them are going to be around, or that they're representative of broader cultural histories or traditions that you don't hear as much about nowadays. So I set to work on that, I really didn't, I got like about 6 episodes out of the way, like January, February, came back to New York. I left town on March 8th for what was to have been a 10-day family trip to Mexico. Right around then, COVID hit. Realized, it's probably not going to be the best idea to go back to New York right now. So I found myself in Texas. Miraculously, initially, the series got picked up by a network that requested a 16-episode order. So being in Texas and with that wind at my back, during the pandemic, I went about continuing to record and assemble the season. Now, at the end of the day, as is often the case in entertainment negotiations, the deal with the network regretfully didn't come together due to issues with advertiser revenue. But in many ways, I think that the pandemic, that this series is kind of a product of the pandemic, in that the circumstances just really kind of all conspired me to get to work on this. And it's been an incredibly rewarding journey. And what's really wonderful is so much of this, I experienced so much of this trip as a solo traveler. And now that it's out in the world and people can listen to it, it's great because I feel like I can now invite people to share in these experiences that I had by myself.
Is the whole thing based in Texas?
So season one is entirely Texas-based. I covered about 1,500 miles worth of Texas. From my hometown of Austin to Houston, Galveston, Fort Worth, the Rio Grande Valley, the Hill Country, and
How
a few
did you
places.
plan it out and find the people to talk to? Are these like friends and family, or just, relentless kind of like journalism kind of work, or how did you make these connections and put together this route and whatnot?
Well, yeah, each episode really kind of informs the other. First of all, each episode is self-contained. You can listen to, whichever one you want without having to worry about, any kind of a narrative arc in terms of the season as a whole. But I would look, I would do an episode and I'd say, okay, well, look, I just did a piece on a dance hall. What's a honky tonk? Let's see, what is the difference between a dance hall and a honky tonk? And let's explore that. And at some points I'd like, okay, well, this is a region that we need to explore. Let's go down to the border and see what kind of culture and stories we can get down there. Or we need something funny at this point, or maybe we do need to, maybe dive into a little issue here and there. But really, it was basically. Just kind of a lot of searching and investigation to try to find these places. But I found for the most part, now interestingly enough, of course, before the pandemic hit, I could just show up at a place unannounced
Right.
and start talking to people. And the first episodes in the series you'll hear, that's pretty much exactly what happened. The honky tonk, Arky Blue Silver Dollar, they had no idea I was going to be there. The first episode about this dive bar in Austin, they didn't know I was going to be there. Dance halls. The pandemic changed all of that. I had to be much more, first of all, many of the places that I started going to were completely off the table because they were closed. In addition to, I couldn't just show up unannounced. I had to be very careful and mindful of safe practices and all of that. But I think that forced me really to think outside the box in regard to a lot of the places that I ended up going to. Because people knew I was coming in advance, I really had to do much more in the way of research and pre-reporting before I got there. And as a result, I think as the series progresses, you kind of get to know some of the subjects a bit more intimately. As I said, I think that there is just kind of great variety with what you'll find in the series in regard to the people and places visited.
So did you have like a kind of like a plan mapped out then, as far as where you're going to go, who you're going to talk to, and then all of a sudden everything happened and you're like, all right, now we got to change the plan?
Not really, because I was probably twiddling for the first few months of the pandemic. I was at home, with my parents, which is something I never thought I'd be doing again, at least for a while. Twiddling my thumbs, going, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. But I certainly as I maybe referenced before, I mean, there were certainly different areas and places that I knew I was interested in covering. But no, I didn't have a grand vision, for the series as a whole starting out of the gate. I really didn't. I kind of let each episode inform the other.
Did you ever have any issues where like you showed up somewhere and like someone got mad at you or things got like hostile for whatever reason?
I really didn't. I've never encountered any hostility. Knock on wood. I find that honestly, people in this world are eager to be heard. And for the most part, people were really excited and honored that, someone like me took an interest in hearing their stories, learning about what they did, learning about the places they're from, what these places represent to them. And now there were a few who, in one famous incident, this Honky Tonk I referenced just a second ago, Arky Blue Silver Dollar. It's just this terrific place in Bandera, Texas. It's owned by Arky Blue. He's had it now for over 50 years. He's this old country artist. He performs there every Saturday night. I thought, man, I got to talk to Arky. Well, I got there. Arky did not want to have a thing to do with me. Wouldn't talk, wouldn't record. He was cordial, but anytime I'd ask him a question, we're talking like, your one-word answers. Doesn't want a part of it. But everyone around Arky, wanted to share their stories, wanted to tell me all about him. And as a result, you get a really wonderful portrait of the man that is maybe different but wonderful in its own way than had I actually been able to sit down and talk to him.
It sounds like it's a same picture painted by a different artist, right? That's pretty awesome. Mm-hmm. So, leading up to your podcast, like what gave you all this experience to you're a great storyteller, and obviously your vocals are very well finessed. Listening to you talk is like listening to like a super clean radio like seasoned broadcaster. Where did you get all this experience, and like what gave you these storytelling abilities?
Well, I thank you so much for that, and I will acknowledge that in many ways, this project is a total 180 from anything I've done leading up to this. Had you told me a few years ago that I'd be doing a podcast, it wasn't on my radar or agenda in the least. I can assure you of that. My background is as an actor and a performer. What I can say is when I first moved to the city, well, first of all, I mean, you talk about voice. I mean, as an actor, I trained in London. We're talking, your Shakespeare, they had like a lot of good voice and diction training that I got to undergo there. As a singer, I've done a lot of vocal training as a result of that. But when I first moved to the city, I realized that no doors were about to open for me anytime soon, and that I had to do something on my own if I had any hope of getting noticed. And so the first thing that I did, I initially thought about writing a one-man show, but I realized pretty quickly that if I were to that it was going to take way more time to write something that I myself would actually want to sit through. It was going to take way more time than I had the patience to do, and I thought to myself, well, with cabaret, the songs are there, the history is there. I could put together a cabaret program. So I put together a show that focused on the songs of the World War II era. And it opened up a lot of wonderful doors for me within the cabaret world. I got some good press out of it. It's been a great journey.
Can you kind of break down? Can you kind of break down what a cabaret is for anyone who's not like super familiar?
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, cabaret is incredibly old school. So you wouldn't be the first person. When I say cabaret, they're kind of like, well, what is that? Because you don't see it a lot. I mean, it was real big in the 1950s. I'm talking supper club entertainment. So it basically, a cabaret show is an evening of stories and songs. Typically, it's in a pretty intimate medium. And I think, when people think of cabaret, they think musical theater, but really cabaret has much more in common with like the tradition of sitting around and telling stories by the campfire. Albeit it's just kind of a very upscale version of that. It happened for years in New York at places like the Oak Room at the Algonquin Hotel, which you mentioned earlier, which is sadly no longer there. But basically that's what it is. And so to just tell you a bit more, the first show that I did was a show that focused on the songs of the World War II era. And basically I told the story of World War II through song, and I incorporated, a lot of research, some personal memories of my grandparents, letters, whatnot. And I put together this evening. And I was fortunate enough to get some good press and attention. I've done other shows too. I did a solo show at Lincoln Center that was dedicated to one of my favorite lyricists, Johnny Mercer. I've also appeared as a soloist on the bill of a concert at Carnegie Hall. I've done a lot. But what I discovered in working in cabaret is that what is said in between the songs in many cases is almost as important as the songs themselves. Because everything that you say informs the song and everything, and it's real important too. No matter what you're doing, obviously, cabaret is very different than a play or a piece of theater, but you still need to have a sense of architecture and a beginning, a middle, and an end to whatever you're doing. And I really learned a lot about storytelling, writing. As I just said, architecture, through all of that work, and in a lot of ways, I've taken tools from that, and I'm applying it to the podcast medium. I'll talk to people, I will collect stories from them. I might grab a few nuggets from stories told here and there, and then it's up to me to assemble the stories through a connective tissue.
And were these your World War II show? Was that a one-man show?
It was, yes. Well, I mean, I had an accompanist on a piano, so yes, that's essentially.
So, are you on stage for like the entire time, or I'm just wondering like how one man entertains an entire room full of people just for hours on
absolutely.
End, right?
No, yes. So it is. Well, it's not for hours on end. It's more for it's for an hour. I mean, I think that an hour length is a good length. You don't want to go any more than an hour and 10 minutes for a cabaret show. But yes, I mean it's just me and a piano. But I think it's to engage and hold an audience's attention. Focused storytelling is very important, and that's really. And it's about being engaging and relatable is what all of that is.
Since you're so well versed like in the performing world, and there's so many different aspects and disciplines there, what's your favorite discipline to perform in?
I mean, if I could do anything, my favorite playwright is a writer by the name of Horton Foote. He's probably most famous for having written the film adaptation of To Kill a Mockingbird. He won the Oscar for that screenplay. But he really was one of the greatest playwrights of the latter half of the 20th century. I mean, if I could do anything, I would act and perform in Horton Foote plays. The challenge is he didn't really write a lot of stuff for young people, and Horton Foote isn't done very often. He's not the splashiest, most popular or trendy of playwrights at this moment. I've been blessed to do some of that work a few times, but you certainly can't make a career out of doing Horton Foote plays. I'll say that much.
So oh, go ahead.
I do say. Mm-hmm. I do say. I mean, I think of myself as an actor first in just about everything that I approach. I don't think of myself as a musician at all, really. I approach if I'm going to sing and perform a song, I approach it from the actor's perspective, and that's how I look at it.
So, have you been able to do any acting or performing really since March, since when you left New York, or how's that been for you?
No, I mean I really haven't. Now I do get occasional auditions for. I have had a few. Occasional auditions for like film, TV, like commercial projects, stuff of that nature. But I do think that the pandemic enabled me to focus and try my hand at this new form of storytelling. And I can say that I actually do believe in many ways this is probably, when I look at the body of the work between acting, between cabaret, between all of this, I really think that this is probably the best work I have ever produced. It's a wonderful journey. And so right now, I mean, I'm probably most interested in finding a way to continue with this project.
And so how many episodes have you done thus far?
So season 1 has 15 episodes. I think there are 7 that have been released now, so we're kind of like at about halfway point in the season. The plan is I'm releasing 2 episodes a month. That just kind of gives me more time to pursue publicity, PR with each episode. It gives me more time to work on growing the show. Audience growth is a huge job, and it really kind of gives me more time to focus and work on that. It's my hope to do a season 2. I'm doing some research for that, and the plan is to expand the map beyond Texas. Because I absolutely believe that the issues explored in the series are absolutely universal. Change is happening everywhere. It's happening in Las Vegas. It's happening in New York, California, London, Paris, Mexico.
Yeah, I feel like the format for what you're doing has so many possibilities, right? You just need a new location with some history.
And so that's... Oh, well, right. But it's everywhere. And I think something that the show spotlights is that culture, art is everywhere. But not only that, oftentimes the best of it is in places that you're just not going to read about in glossy magazines or see on Instagram. I think oftentimes we think, when we hear art culture, we think of palaces of civilization like the Met or the Louvre or the British Museum or whatever. But, look, Detroit gave us Motown. Clarksdale, Mississippi gave us the blues. That culture is beautiful, and it deserves celebrating, and we owe it to ourselves to learn more about where it all came from.
No, I really liked it because at a certain point, those oral histories that you've been recording and getting firsthand won't be there anymore. It'll be a hand-me-down story. So what have you found has been the biggest challenge thus far for you? Whether it be technical or producing or just, from an operation standpoint?
Well, it is one of those things. I think this is probably, the most challenging, ambitious project I've ever undertaken. At the same time, it is a project that has come together with tremendous ease. At the same time, I think consistently I do find, before I take on an episode, before I, enter a new place, start talking to people, there's just always that kind of, oh my goodness, is this going to work? Is this going to be a disaster feeling? It never, I've gotten a lot better. It comes a lot faster. I find that it gets better and easier with each episode. But that never goes away. And at the same time, that's not kind of a bad thing either. It keeps you on your toes a bit. Consistently, I do find that the greatest challenge I encounter is in the writing aspect. That is what takes me the most time, is really figuring out how to eloquently patch a lot of this stuff together. And then sometimes you'll start working on something and go, okay, maybe I'm missing something here. is there something else that I can incorporate into this to amplify this issue and whatnot? So I'd say that writing is certainly what takes me the longest time. Basically, the way that my process works is, I'll go to a place. Typically, with each place that I go, there is kind of an issue or a story attached to the place or the people there that I'm curious to explore. And so I'll talk to a bunch of people there. Obviously, if I'll talk to an owner, I'll ask like an owner different questions than I would a patron or an employee or whatnot. So I'll ask them different questions. In a lot of cases, though, I will ask the same question of a lot of people. Then I'll come back home. I'll take a look at what I have. I'll cut out. I might talk to someone for an hour. Out of that hour, I might only use about 2 minutes worth of footage. But from there, I just kind of look at what I have. I look at the recurring themes, the issues, the opinions, the stories that are brought up. And I just kind of figure out how best I can assemble it into a cohesive whole. As I referenced earlier, everything has to have a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's really kind of what... And there has to be something that you want to say and communicate. And that's really what I focus on with all of this.
No, yeah, I've dropped in and listened to a few episodes, and even just reading like the descriptions, like you start to kind of go down this path of like just getting immersed in the story. I equate it to almost like sometimes like I'll be reading a book and I'll be 200 pages in and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I don't even realize I'm reading right now. Like I'm so immersed in the story, I get that right off the bat just like reading your description. So
I thank you. I thank you for that.
You can see the effort that you put in, and it's fantastic.
Well, I thank you very much. And I think what's just very important for me, too, is it's real important that my audiences have a truly immersive experience when they're listening to this. I want for them to feel as if they're with me on the bar stools in these places. So, you're going to be hearing the clanking of glasses and everything. It really is I work as hard as I can to make it a truly sensory experience for those who tune in and listen.
It reeks of authenticity. That's the way that I think about it. Like when I hear some of these people, like you can hear some of these like more elderly people talking with their deep Texas twang, and you're just like, man, that's it right there,
Oh yes, well, authenticity is important to me, and if I ever, find myself saying something that, if I find myself expressing too much in the way of opinion or judgment, I know I'm making a big mistake. I try my best to really let the people and places speak for themselves, and I am not there. I'm there to. I'm not there to comment. I'm not there to express opinions about any of this. I'm just really kind of there, just to let people, show the authentic soul of these places, and that's what I'm always striving for.
Well, I mean, I think that's probably why your show is done so well. So tell us, moving forward in the future. I mean, so planning on a season 2. Do you have any possible locations you're thinking about setting up, and what else are you thinking about that you're kind of wanting to accomplish here in the near-ish future, the medium-sized picture?
Absolutely. Well, everything can change or evolve, but I'm doing a little bit of preliminary research. I have a goal, come the fall, come September, I want to hit the road again, and I would love to drive Route 66 from Oklahoma to California and collect some oral histories along the way, just see what kind of places can be discovered. I think that Route 66 tells kind of a wonderful story of America in a lot of ways. There were highways that were built before Route 66. There were highways built after, certainly bigger ones. But Route 66, I think, has an incredible legendary status due to the timing of when it all came together. It was commissioned, I think, in 1926, and so if you drive Route 66, I mean, you really are following the same pattern that the Okies took in the Grapes of Wrath, when they, fled to seek work in California. So that history is tied there. It was also a crucial artery in World War II. It also, you end up in kind of that golden age of travel that, road tripping that happened in the late 40s and the 1950s. Then, when it was decommissioned and the bigger highways came along, a lot of places closed, and that tells a story of change as well. And so I'd really like to see what could be discovered by doing that. But, Vanishing Postcards, the concept of this series, it could... New York City is wrestling with the same issues of change. Go to California, go to London. It doesn't matter where you go. Change is constant, and people all over the world are dealing with these issues. And I think it's real important that we do our part to honor the culture and beauty that makes us unique. People didn't... New York, what I do believe saved New York from completely going under in the 1970s, when it was dealing with, horrible fiscal crisis, crime, whatnot, was its culture. People did not abandon New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina because of its incredible culture. People are moving and flocking to Austin like crazy at my hometown, and we have to ask, well, what is it about Austin and Texas that people like that's drawing people there? The culture has a lot to do with it. I don't think that change is something that should be feared. I think that change in many ways is something that should be embraced, but we have to grow and change responsibly. And I think we as a society, people, Americans, can all do infinitely more to protect the culture that is in our own backyards. We really could.
Wow. Yeah. No. I think that's there's a lot of power in those statements, and you're certainly doing your part to protect that culture and to spread the word. So for that, we thank you very much, my man.
Well, I thank you for having me.
No,
it's
yeah,
great
no.
To talk about this all.
Yeah, fantastic. So wrapping up here, we do this thing called Real Talk Rapid Fire, where I want to throw you a bunch of questions, right? And they're real easy, right? First thing that comes to your head, don't overthink it, don't underthink it, all right?
Okay.
All right. Netflix or Hulu?
Oh, Netflix.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Do you like your pizza cut in triangles or squares?
Triangles.
What was your first car?
My grandmother's old diesel 1983 Mercedes-Benz.
Nice. What was your first job?
My first job was picking up dirty towels, washing, drying, folding them at the YMCA in Austin. And trust me, that was not the worst job I have ever had. I have had jobs that were worse than that.
What was your worst job you ever had?
The worst job, I worked front desk at a spa in New York City. That was the worst job I have ever had. Front desk. Everybody needs to work service at some point in their lives. I'm telling you that right now. You will be a much better, more empathetic person, but it's also going to force you to develop a spine. A lot of the spine I've developed in life has come as a result of working in service, bartending, you name it.
Right, absolutely. I heard that, man. What's your favorite city in America?
Oh, gosh, that's a hard... Oh, man, oh, gosh, it has to be New York. It really does.
All right.
It has to be New York, but I also have to give love to my hometown of Austin as well.
Wow.
I really do.
I'll let you have two.
Okay, yeah.
Especially because you're there in Austin right now, and I don't want anything to happen.
I'm in New York.
I'm in New York.
Right
oh, yeah,
now.
you're in New
right.
York, so you can say New York. They're not going to come from Austin to come get you. Don't worry.
Exactly. Yeah. Right.
Are aliens real?
Probably. I don't. I do believe that the universe is infinite. I am quite confident that there is intelligent life that exists far beyond this world. We had a pond in our backyard. There were a bunch of fish in that pond, and they had no concept of what was going on just a few feet beyond what they could see. They didn't know what was going on in our house, on our street, in Austin, in Texas, in the U.S., and I think that we're all just like a bunch of fish in a pond, really, when it comes to stuff like that. Now, have aliens visited the Earth? I cannot speak to that. I'm not into much in the way of conspiracies of that nature, but there's intelligent life beyond this. Beyond where we are, sure.
I'm not gonna lie, that sounds like an answer that an alien would give. Right? Yeah, we're real, we're real, but I'm not gonna go much deeper into that.
Yeah, you found me out. Why do you think I've been doing all this research, talking to people?
No kidding. You're doing human research, is what you're doing.
Exactly.
Microsoft or Apple?
Microsoft.
Last question. Will you come back on 100 episodes, give us a little update, share some more stories with us, and tell us some more tales?
Oh, sure. Why not?
Excellent, man. Well, hey, I really appreciate your time today, Evan. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure talking to you, hearing about Vanishing Postcards and whatnot. Everyone, make sure you go like and you follow and listen to his podcast. Evan, give us the full rundown of where anyone can contact you if they want to get a hold of you, your website, where to listen to your podcast. Give us the whole spiel, and this will be down below in the description as well.
Absolutely. So, first of all, yes, I would be most appreciative if you might consider listening, subscribing to Vanishing Postcard, wherever you get your podcast. You're listening to a podcast right now. I'm quite confident that whatever app you're using, you can find us there. We're on Apple, Spotify, all the usual suspects. You can also go to vanishingpostcards.com, or better yet, follow Vanishing Postcards on Instagram if you want a lot of companion information. You want to see pictures of the people and places to accompany some of the voices that you're hearing. And I'm very approachable. You can find me on Instagram, vanishingpostcards.com. Those are great places to track me down if you ever feel like reaching out for any reason whatsoever.
All right. Well, thank you so much again, Evan. And everyone, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button, rate button, do whatever button is there. Hit it. There's no bad button. So, everyone, we're out of here. Till next time.
You've been listening to Real Talk with Mason. Make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from the show. We hope you've had fun. We know we did, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with Mason on Instagram at Real Talk with Mason. Walter Bagehot once said, "The greatest pleasure in life is doing what people say you cannot do." And we tend to agree. Till next time.